Hello everyone, welcome my YouTube channel. Ukraine's armed forces significantly replenish prisoner of war exchange fund during counteroffensive. Soledar and Bakhmut are the hottest spots in Donbass. The armed forces of Ukraine have destroyed Russian equipment in the south, and during the offensive, the exchange fund of prisoners of war to be swapped for Ukrainian captives in Russia, was significantly replenished. Quote from Zelensky: "The situation on the front line has not undergone any significant changes over the past day. Soledar and Bakhmut are the key hotspots in Donbass, with very heavy fighting continuing there. The occupiers have thrown everyone they could at our forces, including 2,000 prisoners. They are among mercenaries right there. And these are convicts with long sentences for serious crimes. They are kept at the front not only with money, but also with the promise of amnesty. This is how the Russian state sponsors terror. It looks for murderers in prisons and promises them freedom if they kill again. Does anyone in the world still doubt whether Russia should be officially labeled as a terrorist state? I don't think so." Details. Zelensky also praised the 60th Inhulets Infantry Brigade, the 17th Separate Kryvyi Rih Tank Brigade, named after Koshchantin Pestushko, the 128th Separate Mountain Assault Zakarpasha Brigade, and the 59th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade named after Yakov Hanswick, for coordinated actions on the Kherson front and effective destruction of enemy equipment. The president went on to say that, "I would like to mention today those units that provided us with a replenishment of the exchange fund. I thank the 54th Separate Reconnaissance Battalion named after Mikhailo Taisha, the 80th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade and the 92nd Separate Mechanized Brigade, which during the offensive significantly increased our ability to bring Ukrainians home." Iran to send missiles and UAVs to Russia. Israel calls for military aid to Ukraine. The highlights of the day: Iran plans to transfer to Russia an additional batch of drones and short-range ballistic missiles. Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Nachman Shai, called for military aid to Ukraine. Russians are intensifying filtering measures on the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson Oblast and have begun the process of evacuating their state institutions. We collected the key news for today. Over the past day, October 15, the Ukrainian military eliminated another 300 Russian occupiers. During the active war against Ukraine, the Russian army lost approximately 65,000 soldiers. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. Iran plans to transfer to Russia an additional batch of drones and, for the first time, short-range ballistic missiles. This was reported by the Washington Post with reference to U.S. security officials and its allies. According to the publication, on September 18, Tehran directed officials to Russia to agree on the terms of additional supplies of weapons, including 2 types of Iranian surface-to-surface missiles. This information was provided by a country that is an ally of the United States, which closely monitors Iran's activities in the field of weapons. Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Nachman Shai, called for military aid to Ukraine after reports that Iran plans to supply its missiles to Russia. He wrote about it on Twitter. "There is no longer any doubt where Israel should stand in this bloody conflict. The time has come for Ukraine to receive military aid as well, just as the USA and NATO countries provide," the minister wrote. Russians are intensifying filtering measures on the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson Oblast and have begun the process of evacuating their state institutions. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. According to available information, employees and property of banks and a pension fund are being taken from Kherson to the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. In addition, according to the General Staff, the moral and psychological state of the population has significantly decreased in the border regions of Russia. In particular, this is caused by the lack of medical care for civilians. Due to the mobilization of medical workers and the increase in the flow of wounded, civilians are denied medical services in hospitals of the Belgorod region. Ukrainian aviation carried out more than 20 strikes per day. Ukrainian defenders continue to restrain the enemy and cause him losses in manpower and hardware. On October 16, the aviation of the Defense Forces carried out more than 20 strikes. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. As a result of airstrikes, it was confirmed that 17 areas of concentration of weapons and military hardware, as well as 4 positions of the enemy's anti-aircraft missile systems, were damaged. In addition, our air defense units shot down 1 enemy UAV. Furthermore, units of missile forces and artillery hit one enemy command post during the current day. Ukraine and Turkey are ready to continue the grain agreement. Ukraine and Turkey support the continuation of the so-called grain agreement, which allowed unblocking of the export of Ukrainian food by sea. This was reported by the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine. On October 16, Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar met with Ukrainian Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov at the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul. The UN, Turkey, and Ukraine, as parties to the grain agreement, are ready to extend its validity and have assured that they will make maximum efforts for its successful implementation. And first reports of deaths of newly mobilized Russian soldiers in Ukraine. Guardian: the first deaths of recently mobilized soldiers in Ukraine have been reported in Russia. UK newspaper The Guardian wrote on October 17 the Russian mobilized soldiers died just a few weeks after the announcement of partial mobilization by dictator Vladimir Putin on September 21. According to The Guardian, the first coffins are now returning to Russia from Ukraine, bringing the remains of ordinary Russians who at first were promised a quick, special military operation, and now have been drafted to go and fight in a war. Western journalists believe that their deaths may mark another inflection point for Russia in this conflict. In particular, on October 13, the Chelyabinsk region reported the death of 5 mobilized soldiers from a single military enlistment office. 4 more people died in the Krasnoyarsk region. Citing data from the BBC's Russian service, The Guardian writes that another 14 people died before reaching the front for reasons including suicide, heart attacks, and being killed in fights. The newspaper also quotes Putin, who at a press conference in Kazakhstan on October 14, said that 16,000 mobilized soldiers were already fighting in Ukraine and that 222,000 Russians had already been drafted. It is noted that some of the deaths clearly indicate that men are sent to war without proper training. Russia's mobilization drive has been plagued by reports of neglect, unexplained deaths and suicides, the newspaper writes. The Guardian also cites several similar examples. In particular, one man is reported to have shot himself dead during a training exercise at a military base near St. Petersburg, while a resident of Siberia cut his own throat in a mess hall. Kremlin dictator Putin announced a partial mobilization after the Russian army suffered a heavy defeat in Ukraine, losing swaths of formerly occupied territory in Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast. According to official data from the Russian Defense Ministry, the plan is to draft about 300,000 reservists. However, the part of the published decree ordering the mobilization dealing with the number of draftees is marked only for official use. According to Russian opposition media, the secret paragraph of the plan details the mobilization of around 1 million Russians for the war in Ukraine. After the announcement, Russians began to buy tickets abroad en masse to avoid participation in their country's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Good day to everyone.